Good afternoon and welcome to the HL7 Da Vinci Community Roundtable. Today's session, Da Vinci's Trebuchet, launching your interoperability implementations. My name is Alex Goss, and it is my pleasure to moderate today's Community Roundtable and to remind all of us that we engage in these forums under HL7's antitrust policies to ensure appropriate collaboration and information sharing. Today's session delves into HL7 Da Vinci Project's Trebuchet Fire Pilots. Trebuchet is one of several great examples of how Da Vinci addresses industry needs and works with our members and others across the ecosystem to foster pathways to improved and scalable health data exchange. The information you'll receive today will equip you and your colleagues with the knowledge and resources needed to successfully launch your Da Vinci implementation guide journey. Pilot leaders and a panel of payer and provider implementers will share their expertise with you. After an initial level setting session that reviews the purpose and current state of the Da Vinci Trebuchet pilots, presenters will describe what is involved with piloting and how to determine your organization's readiness for piloting. This will include learning about key elements of finding or creating a pilot, including identifying other parties of the willing, the role of vendors in your pilot design, your network-based implications, and how your current trading partners fit into your vision. You'll also learn about practical considerations and available resources. We'll round out the event with a robust panel of providers and payers who will share their piloting journey. Discussion topics covered will include how panelists selected their use cases, how they gained executive support, and what they know now that they wish they knew at the beginning of their journey. We have an esteemed panel of implementers and collaborators, including Karen Ashton, Director of Population Health Digital Solutions at MultiCare Connected Care. Chris Chaffee, IT Business System Analyst, Senior Advisor, Elevance Health. Michael Gould, Associate Vice President, Interoperability Strategy at Omega. Srihari Muthiala, Director, Healthcare Solutions and Interoperability, Cambia Health Solutions. Scott Rosengal, Solution Architect at eHealth Exchange. Michael Westover, Vice President, Population Health at Providence. Let's take care of a few housekeeping items before we turn it over to our esteemed panelists. Your lines are muted to aid our recording quality, and we encourage you to use the Q&A menu option to submit your questions throughout today's session. We'll be taking your questions at the end. We've disabled the chat feature, so make sure you use that Q&A feature. At the end of our webinar, we'll launch a survey, and we really hope that you'll complete that, as it really helps us improve our quality programming and understand the issues of priority topics to you for future sessions. We do have our sessions recording available along with the slides on Da Vinci's calendar. We typically meet for the Community Roundtable industry-facing webinar on the fourth Wednesdays of each month. And we will return on March 26th at 4 p.m. Eastern with our next Community Roundtable, and we'll have those registration details posted in the near future on the Da Vinci calendar. A few industry events I'd like to tout include next week's HIMSS 25 in Vegas. We have a number of Da Vinci presentations listed on a particular page on our Confluence site. The link is here for you to take a look at that. Should you be attending the session or attending the conference, we hope to see you. There'll be a WEDI spotlight on CMS 0057 implementation update, payers, providers, authorization, sponsored by Utility Health on March 18th. Encourage you to attend that virtual webinar. HL7 events to tout include the upcoming HL7 Da Vinci Project Training and Testing event, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about in a moment. This is a virtual-only event, April 22nd to the 24th, and registration is now open. The May working group meeting of HL7, including its Fire Connect-a-thon, will be held in Madrid, Spain, May 10th through the 16th. The Da Vinci event is for this spring really came out of interest of our Da Vinci membership in being able to collaborate with each other, because not everybody was going to be able to travel internationally. And they wanted to ensure that we had the opportunity to continue our testing efforts and also to provide hands-on training to help us as an industry advance our compliance and our implementation with CMS 0057. But we also recognize that teams may need help in understanding strategies related to automating workflow, maximizing strategic value and efficiencies while also meeting those federal regulations. So we've designed a 3-day event. The first day will provide a track business-oriented and will be rounded out by the 2-day payer data exchange technical track and burden reduction technical tracks. At the conclusion of those 2 days of tracks, we'll pivot to a testing environment to enable folks to roll up their sleeves and share and exchange information using those PDACs and burden reduction trifecta implementation guides. There'll be 2 days of highly interactive content delivery and demonstrations that we are sure to help you and your team, which we hope will include executives, managers, analysts, and technical staff in advancing your own strategic value and benefit from implementing CMS 0057. Some folks may need some additional legwork to help them get ready to maximize their value out of the Da Vinci event. So there is available training. Should you be inclined to do so, you can access that via HL7's Education on Demand portal. And as a registered event, you will get a discount on those extensive courses available from HL7. We hope you will learn more by checking out our link and also consider registering for that 3-day event, or to pick a day that would make most sense for you, as we do also have day passes. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Scott Rosengall, Solution Architect at eHealth Exchange, to take it away.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining and listening to me drone on about Project Trebuchet. I'm here to get you excited about some concepts and talk through what Project Trebuchet is. So I'm one of the co-leads of Project Trebuchet along with Mike Gould, and I helped to kind of create this plan and working towards executing it. So Da Vinci Project Trebuchet has a few key goals that I wanted to start off with to level set. We exist to help payers and providers and other users of Da Vinci implementation guides to launch into production, hence the Trebuchet. The idea here is that we want to help create pilots, to create the framework that is necessary for successful pilots, and to help drive problem solving as part of that pilot work. We want to share knowledge. We want to help organize and really bring together a community. Everybody is working on these same topics. Everybody's seeing these same challenges, and you're all sharing back those challenges with certain IG leads as you encounter them. But what we really need is more of a holistic view of what those challenges look like when we're entering production work. So we are focused on the CMS 57 mandates, and we're actually focusing on 2025 and 2026 because we want to take a long view on this. We want to be able to say that we are working towards pilots even in Q3 of 2026 or Q4, because that helps project what's happening in the industry and helps others understand really where things are headed. It helps build momentum. So we are facilitating Da Vinci implementation guide pilots and taking those incremental steps to work towards this vision. One of the topics that we really need to address as a community is how to get to scale. You can implement an implementation guide. You can get burden reduction, for example, up and running as a payer or provider. And really all you have is point-to-point connectivity. So what we're looking at with the CMS 57 mandates is extremely broad connectivity, something that the industry really has never done before to this degree. There are a lot of questions out there. How does a provider connect to all the pertinent payers? How do they do that in a way that doesn't require hours and hours per payer? What happens if there's differences in implementations between those payers for a provider? What are the impacts, and how do we avoid that as a community? And then what does the implementation guide look like for a given DaVinci IG, like burden reduction, when we're thinking about TEFCA? What changes or what additions do you have to make in order to make this work in sort of that networked fashion? So, we're really looking beyond the implementation guides and looking at production deployment, but not just production deployment in a point-to-point manner, but across the network. Trebuchet is, eyeing this goal. We're designing plans to meet this goal, to help organizations get together with, between payers and providers, as well as the technologists, the software vendors out there, to establish these best practices and really build a community that can communicate, educate each other on different findings, and reduce the burden of actually bringing these things live. So there's a lot of core goals, these things that we're trying to attack, and it's really focused in on that CMS 57 rule, but also looking at how we can effectively deploy this at scale. There's a question in the chat that I'll address here because it's a great point in time. The ASTP ONC has a 10 by 10 project, or a 10 by 10 coalition, which is really intended at getting payers and providers, 10 of each, to communicate and connect. That is really well aligned with what we're doing here in Trebuchet, and we're working together with that group to understand how we can reduce the number of meetings or the overall burden if organizations want to participate in both. There's really no reason that a DaVinci burden reduction or a CDEX implementation or pilot has to be totally separate or only can join one or the other. We really do want that to be sort of fluid to a degree. We do share a lot of the same goals, and so there's some overlap there. I think there's some room for us to improve on how we're not overlapping so much, or how we're engaging each group, and we're continuing to work on that together. So I want to highlight a few things that we've done in the past already, and where we're headed. So, well, to set the stage for where we're headed. So the current and past work that we've performed has really been focused around some different point-to-point engagements, or engagements where you have a payer, provider, and a technology vendor working on something together. You can see on the left side that we've got a large number of organizations participating in different pilots from the provider and the payer side. And those pilots range across CDEX, provider access, electronic prior authorization, and attribution, those different implementation guides. So we really do have a good bit of breadth in the pilot work that we're performing. We're getting great experience, but the need here is to grow. We need to grow that further. We need to see momentum in the right directions towards CMS 57F compliance. One of the other things that we've done is we started recording our lessons learned from those pilots. So if you encounter an issue with the implementation guides, if you encounter an issue with a certain EHR's ability to manage the FHIR queries related to that implementation guide, or anything along the line that really isn't something you can resolve yourself, you don't own that technology or system, and somebody else might need to know about this when they're working on the same thing, we're recording all of those on a Confluence document. So among across those lessons learned, our pilots themselves, the communication that we're doing, the education sessions, we're really trying to build up a body of knowledge around implementation of the CMS 57F requirements and the DaVinci implementation guides that are associated. So we are doing education sessions as well. You can see, I mentioned those implementation lessons learned in the prior slide. We also have test cases created. So if you're trying to get an understanding of what you need to test for a given implementation guide, we have a list of different test cases for that implementation guide to help you get started. We're trying to share other templated materials like that to help folks, save that 1 hour, understand how to get started, and kind of maybe have some of those details that you would otherwise have to think through or work through. We have a lot of great education webinars already. We've done overviews of the burden reduction implementation guides. Actually, I think it was CRD. We've done an overview of all of the implementation guides in Da Vinci and how they work together and relate. We are working on a provider-focused burden reduction educational webinar. We're doing a FAST education webinar actually tomorrow, and would love to see folks there. So we got a lot of different great education sessions. We're recording all of those, and we're putting that information online for folks to consume and be able to, again, grow the community, increase knowledge in the community about these implementation guides, and make implementation faster and easier. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about pilots. The pilot structure is something that we've been building out in the recent past in an effort to really create that sense of momentum and to be able to document that momentum and show it. The pilot structure is now being defined as a quarterly cohort of organizations that are interested in a given use case. So pilots would be confined to a single quarter, and the organizations will achieve their pilot goals in sort of a non-production manner during that quarter. The organizations can then proceed and continue to pilot, add new features, add new use cases as they continue to grow their technology in the succeeding quarters. Anybody can sign up for pilots for Trebuchet. We are not focused on just Da Vinci members. We are not focused on just payers or just certain organization types. We want everybody involved who wants to come and learn. So anyone can sign up. And what we've done then is also taken the implementation guides and defined specific use cases that you can pilot. Those use cases are either the broad implementation guide as a starting point or a simple starting point, or they can become more narrow. For example, some organizations might want to pilot CRD only for burden reduction because they're ready for that, but they're not ready for DTR and PAS. So we have these different use cases broken up into inside of our implementation materials, which are available on the sign up page and in the Confluence documents. And then for each use case, we have different testing requirements that allow each organization to ensure that they are ready for a pilot. This helps us avoid some of the issues that occur when two organizations get together and start piloting. We want those organizations to both have some testing under their belts already so that they're not starting fresh, so that both organizations can get equal value from the process and not have one organization that's really mature and not able to actually test because they're waiting on their partner to finish that work. We also have some engagement expectations. We want folks to understand exactly what it is they're expected to do if they're joining a pilot. So we have all those recorded, and we'll talk through those later. And then finally, we're doing these report outs and information sharing. Again, get that information back into the community. Let's learn from your pilot work and help others succeed and stand on your shoulders. We are scheduling the cohorts now. We are scheduling them quarterly, again, through the end of 2026. So I encourage everyone to think about, like, when will you be ready to pilot something? Is it going to be next week? Is it going to be next month or next year? We're here for you. We want that information. We want to be there to work with you towards getting that preparation for piloting and then to work on that pilot together. And by all of us kind of getting together and stating, hey, yeah, we're going to participate in this pilot, we build that momentum. So participants are going to see kind of a standardized experience in each one of their pilots for any use case that they select. That experience includes, of course, the sign-up process and then pre-pilot testing, which I mentioned. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Then what happens is the participants are going to be paired up to do point-to-point testing. That means that each participant is going to connect to each other, and they're going to complete sort of the basic use case and testing in a point-to-point manner. What's an optional next step is to allow those participants to then connect into sort of a network, like a TEFCA type environment, where they can actually pilot their use case across participants in a networked manner. What we're anticipating is that organizations that complete point-to-point testing will want to continue testing as they go forward. So post-cohort engagement is a way that that organization can say, hey, my endpoints are available for the new cohorts, the next quarter, to test against when they're ready to do network testing. And so what we're doing is sort of leveling ourselves up in incrementally. We're starting off by saying, okay, I can actually do this use case. I've fully tested and I've got, my happy path and my error cases all figured out in a point-to-point manner. And now I'm going to join up into this network and see how that impacts my environment. And now once I've kind of gotten that networked connectivity working and I'm able to execute those same tests, now what I can do is actually be ready to test new changes as I bring them in the next quarter. So we're really working towards that networked TEFCA kind of concept, but really want to emphasize that the point-to-point testing is really going to be where the rubber hits the road and the most important aspects as we get started. Just to address some of the questions before I move on here, you do not have to be part of DaVinci in order to pilot work. Yeah, we are welcoming anybody. Anybody and their daughter can join up and do this work. You do not have to be part of any HL7 group or accelerator to join up in a pilot. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about those use cases for a minute. The use cases that we've defined so far are on the screen here. We have burn reduction in the center because we think that that's going to be a real popular one. And we have already seen, of course, a lot of organizations moving towards that for obvious reasons. But we don't want to stop there. Member attribution is a really core use case to a lot of the other guides, and we see that as great low-hanging fruit for a lot of organizations. Clinical data exchange, payer-to-payer data exchange, provider access, and then we have this concept called TEFCA Fire that we want to start thinking about in piloting. TEFCA Fire is really about the client registration process, the dynamic client registration process, or the use of IHE profiles to find a patient within a network. So TEFCA Fire goes a little bit beyond the DaVinci implementation guides and more into the TEFCA space. But it allows us to kind of understand better what this experience is going to look like for you in the future and how you might be prepared and be able to test some of those components. I'll get to some of the questions that I'm seeing a little bit later as I get through the content.
Yeah, actually, Scott, no worries. We're going to handle those at the end after we get through the panel. We'll run through all these questions, so you can just stay focused on your content. But appreciate you taking care of the audience's reach.
So we have paths within our use cases. I think I mentioned this before, where we can kind of break down a use case into individual paths that organizations might want to take. So you don't have to do everything within an implementation guide in order to be piloting. And so we have some defined paths that allows us to define the test cases for those paths and really sort of kind of hardwire this process. But if organizations come to us and say, hey, I really want to do payer-to-payer data exchange, but I can actually only initiate a query right now, that's okay. We're going to figure it out together. We want to help everyone pilot and find the best path to get their software tested. And what we've done so far is try to create a framework to allow organizations to understand what it is they need to do and how they can do it. And then we can allow some wiggle room inside of that. Testing tools and requirements are, these are really core to helping organizations understand, are they ready for a pilot? And so we started off looking at the existing capabilities for testing that everybody has access to, but maybe you're using, maybe you're not. Each use case, as I mentioned, and sort of each path within the use cases will have a defined set of testing tools for pre-pilot testing. Pre-pilot testing takes place whenever. Maybe you've already completed pre-pilot testing because you've done some work and used HL7 Inferno for your use case. That's great. We want to just make sure that everybody has met a minimum bar of functionality and has done a minimum set of testing, again, to ensure everybody's on the same page and we don't have one super mature organization waiting on one that's not quite ready. Participants will undergo some of this testing. If you haven't completed it, you'll undergo that with a Trebuchet lead. Maybe I'll join a call with you and help you understand what needs to happen or help you execute the test. The testing tools that we have are kind of widely varied. HL7 Inferno is obviously one that everyone's somewhat familiar with already. There are a couple of others that are provided by vendors, and this is the list today. If other vendors are interested in joining and providing some tooling to get your name out there, you're welcome too. We want to be that open organization and help others succeed. The Health Exchange has provided a Smart on Fire proxy application. This helps providers that don't have the right functionalities to get electronic prior authorization working in a networked manner. Metal provides their PayX application, which is a smart on fire application for the DaVinci burden reduction workflows, and actually covers a number of other use cases as well. Nuclear Health provides an EHR that allows you to test a lot of different workflows from the opposite standpoint, the standpoint of the service that integrates with that EHR. So you can test burden reduction workflows, clinical data exchange, and Firebase transactions using this EHR. Finally, Z Omega Health provides Health Unity, which is a smart on fire application for DaVinci burden reduction workflows. So we've got a lot of cool tools. We are still building out this repertoire. But I think the big value here is that these are all available to you without any charge and any contracting as part of the Trebuchet project. We want you to be able to start testing and use these tools to help you test better. There are certain terms surrounding some of these tools, and we'll help you understand what those mean. But if you're interested in any of those, you feel free to reach out, or we can chat at some other point in time. So I wanted to touch a little bit on understanding, are you ready for a pilot, and what does it mean to be ready? Obviously, technology is one component of it, and we talked about that already with the pre-pilot testing. You need to pass the pre-pilot testing in order to pilot. But you need to think about this organizationally as well. Your organization needs to be ready for piloting, and you kind of have to start asking the right questions and thinking about who should be involved in this discussion, so that you as an organization can really build upon the success in the pilot and make use of that pilot work as much as possible. So, what I would ask folks that are thinking about this is, make sure, of course, you have the technology in place. Understand who from your organization should be in the know, and start bringing them into discussions. Invite them to Trebuchet, or email me and get a meeting on the calendar to talk through this. Whatever it is you need, let's get those folks up to speed so everybody's in the know and that you're building upon this success and not kind of siloing it. We're going to help you understand how much time you need to budget to participate in a pilot. That's really going to be based on your use case and your readiness. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. We can chat via email, whatever. And then finally, the process of making changes in your software to accommodate pilot findings and issues is something that you're going to have to consider. You have technology that's available. You're going to have engineers available to update that technology as you find issues. That is the point of the pilot. Let's find the issues. Let's fix the problems in your software. Let's expose problems with the IGs. All those things are going to require some analysis and potentially development work in order for you to continue piloting and be successful. So you got to think about the resourcing that you'll need, not just from the testing perspective or joining meetings, but also from the how do we support the engineering side of things. Okay. Oh, I've talked a lot, huh? Participant expectations. So our cohort participants there are certain expectations that we set to ensure that folks are in the know and they're making the right decision when they decide to join. Active participation is incredibly important. We do not want pilot participants to just stop what they're doing and kind of drop out. So we do expect folks to ensure they have a couple hours a week to participate in these pilots. We're not looking for a huge amount of effort here. It is just a few hours per week. From the engineering perspective, there could be more if you run into major challenges, but again, that's probably something that you're already budgeting for as part of your engineering processes. We talked about the systems ready for testing. The participation in the weekly meetings is also very important. So it's not just about participating in your pilot, but also being able to report back. And your organization should be willing to put its name out there that you are participating. That's important to us because of that whole momentum concept that I was talking about. We want organizations to be willing to say, yes, I'm piloting my software in this process, and we want to be able to sing your successes when it's done. Finally, we are asking organizations to update documentation and maintain confluence with their lessons learned. It's just part of standing on each other's shoulders. All right. I talked a bit about the pre-pilot testing already. These are just some examples of what those testing requirements are. I think the point of this slide is really to emphasize that this is not incredibly burdensome. We are not looking for a huge amount of work from you to get ready for pre-pilot testing. We are simply looking for you to attest that you can do the things in that implementation guide. We also provide some methods as far as how to test. We do expect pre-pilot testing to occur before the quarterly cohort starts. So if you are participating in the Q2 cohort this year, we would want pre-pilot testing to be starting soon. Yeah. Finally, how do you sign up? I'm sure everyone is asking this question right now and super excited about getting into a Trebuchet pilot. I know that I've already signed up for every quarter, so just saying. The cohort sign up page is available. There's a link right here. It's available on Confluence, and just really encourage everybody to jump over there and write your name down. You don't have to get every detail correct right now. If you want to chat, we can certainly chat through that a little bit more, get your questions answered before you finally commit. When the pilot does start, there's some certain things that we ask the pilot participants to do. Sharing authentication and connectivity information can be very beneficial if you can do that publicly in a way with your test systems where you're actually providing that information in a standard manner so that you can provide it to multiple organizations. We're looking for organizations to think that through because that connectivity and authentication process can take some time. We do expect pilot participants to meet together directly and to communicate about their pilot work. That's not something that the Trebuchet core team is leading, right? We are providing the venue for pilot work. We're connecting partners, but we're not actually leading your pilot. Trebuchet leadership is available to assist with certain topics. If a pilot participant drops out, they're non-responsive, we can try and help out, find that person, figure out what's going on. We can help with IG questions if we can get the right person to answer your questions so that you have a concrete understanding of why something is documented the way it is or how we might work around it. As well as any issues with your pre-pilot testing or your actual pilot testing. If there's something that you're running into that you just don't understand, we're happy to jump in and provide some guidance because again, that goes back to the knowledge sharing and our ability to kind of get that documented and get it out to the masses here. Touching on the TEFCA Lite or the networked approach, we are trying to find ways to get organizations to connect once to a network and be able to communicate across that network to other organizations. We are not looking for ways to comply completely with the RCE SOPs. The RCE SOPs are going to be more broad than what we want to pilot right now, and they don't add value to our pilots. They would add a lot of work and probably act as a barrier in most cases. So, I say TEFCA Lite because what we want is we want networked approaches to connectivity, and we want to prove that a networked approach works. If 50 of us can all get together and say, hey, I can do payer data exchange, provider data exchange, or provider access, CDEX and burden reduction all over this network to anybody else on this network that has the right endpoints, that's proving interoperability nationwide, right? And that's one of our core goals as Trebuchet. We want to show the rest of the country that we can do this, that it's not that hard. We have the ideas, we have the right technologies, and we can really do this. We just need the participation and that momentum again towards getting the work done. Okay. I think as we're talking about this, a lot of organizations out there are actually in a build, buy, or borrow decision process right now, thinking about how do I actually support these functionalities? Do I need to work with a vendor? Or maybe you already have a vendor that you've decided on. We welcome vendors into this process. We welcome vendors into the process in sort of two ways. Vendors can participate directly in pilots. For example, a vendor can act as a provider or a payer and provide software that does so. If they don't actually have a payer behind the scenes, they're still acting as that payer, and that can still add a huge amount of value to our pilot work and a great amount of testing to their software for their software. Vendors can also act sort of behind the scenes with a pilot participant. So oftentimes a payer will have 4 or 5 different vendors working on prior auth. One's for certain CPT codes and others for others. There are a lot of different opportunities out there for vendors to be engaged, and we would welcome all of them to the table, of course, and want them engaged in whatever capacity. Okay, I think this is one of my last slides here. Yeah. We've seen a number of roadblocks to pilots, and we're trying to work around some of those. So I just wanted to be transparent about some of this. Organizational readiness is one of those things that we built into the process with pre-pilot testing. Communication and approval across internal stakeholders is another, and that's why I was harping earlier on the idea of getting your organization on board, even if you're already bought in and jumping up and down at the thought of this. We also see in the industry competitive advantage concerns. Why should I test my software with this other group if they're gonna try and steal my patients? Overall, we are an open public organization, and everything that we do needs to be open and public. So if there are certain topics that are competitive advantage to you, if you have concerns about that, let me know. I think we can talk through it and see if there's a way to get around that, or reframe the discussion so that you're not exposing anything competitive. One of the issues with the 10 by 10 process so far is that organizations aren't ready yet to sign the TEFCA agreement to basically say, yeah, I'm willing to share all this data with others if they share data with me. That's a hard process legally, and it takes a long time. QHIN selection is another issue, right? Organizations have to make that educated decision as far as which QHIN to join and how do they onboard into TEFCA. That's why we're not calling this TEFCA, right? That's why we're calling it TEFCA Lite and thinking about it in that manner. We want to prove out use cases in non-production in a lot of cases so that no agreement's required. But then if production is required, there's also opportunities to sort of on-ramp a little bit faster than what might be required through a TEFCA agreement. Other roadblocks we've seen is just folks, looking to say, well, I don't see everybody else doing this, so why should I do it? And really, I think that's the idea of scheduling these cohorts out over the course of the next 6 quarters or 7 quarters. We want you to see that everyone else is doing it, and I'm out there behind the scenes telling everybody else that they need to do this too. So hopefully we can get that momentum going. I would love to see everybody sort of signed up and participating in some sort of pilot, because it shows everyone else in the industry that's not part of Da Vinci that they're behind and they need to catch up. Okay, this is just a point. I wanted to make that point again about networked connectivity, right? So the idea of point-to-point connectivity is great for certain things, and it's where we're going to start. But what we see is a transition from point-to-point connectivity into a network where one organization connects to one QHIN or one participant, and they obtain connectivity across the network. We see this as the holy grail of connectivity for a lot of reasons in the industry, and certainly saves every organization a heck of a lot of time and money if we can get it done right. So that's one of the key goals here with Trebuchet, is to advance networked connectivity, advance the concept of TEFCA, and prove it out. We want to show everybody that this works so that come 2027, it's not a stumbling start, but a running start. Okay, I think that is everything from me. On to the panel discussion.
So as folks come on screen, I'm going to go ahead and take away the screen share at this point. I think we can stop having the panelists linked. If you want to stop sharing, Scott, and Mike, go ahead and lead us into this panel, and then we'll handle Q&A thereafter.
Sure thing, Alex. And thank you, Michael and Karen and Chris and Sri and Scott for getting us launched into this. First, I'd like to have some of our panelists share how they chose their use cases, what they wanted to pilot when they did their pilots. So maybe Ravi and Karen, could you speak to the use cases that you chose?
Michael, I will be taking that one. Ravi is there for the backup.
I'm sorry, Sri.
I can take that one. And Karen, you can follow up with me anytime. So, Michael, for us, mostly all our use cases are driven or emerge from our business needs. Typically that's the angle where we focus mainly to serve our member from the high value care perspective. So we'll see those angle comes all the time. But the most important angle, what I'm going to tell is like when we are choosing this one, we chose these use cases based on the core value of the QHIN, which is like get into it's a single point of an access where you can come in and have access to all your participants. Imagine that if I'm looking for a piece of data about one of my member, I can get all that information back through this network. So that's led us actually choose some of these use cases from that angle. As you know, one of the use cases I'm going to pick, I think, Michael, you asked the question about what use cases we picked, right? So one is a prior authorization is one which we closely work with our multi-care partner. And also the second one is the clinical data exchange and also the provider access API too. So the prior authorization is close to our heart here. We've been working on this from 2022. We launched our Smart Auth application. And then we launched to a lot of providers, and we have a great partner with the multi-care, and that's a great success. Everybody see that one and say like, wow, we want that one too. But the problem what we faced is it's not scalable, right? We launched it on 8 different providers, and they all excited about that one. And the first thing they said, like, how can I use the same app for the different health plans? It only works for the regions, right? So that's when we pivoted ourselves and started looking to hey, Trebuchet, I mean, like this is a great opportunity for us to participate here so that it can serve for all the all the health plans around there. So Karen, anything you want to add?
Thank you. Great comments. And Multicare Connected Care is our clinically integrated network at Multicare. So interoperability, as everybody knows, is key when you're managing the full care of patients across multiple EMRs. And we wanted to transform that. So, we chose the clinical data exchange with CDEX and Bulk so that we could support patient care and we could do quality reporting across our network. And as Sri said, the one that bubbled up to the top and it was prior authorization. So that's the other one that we chose. And one of the first reasons it came bubbling up to the top priority is we sat down and did a workflow review with our auth teams. And that showed the tedious and lengthy processes that they go through. And, technology is an enabler, and we just wanted to enable these folks because the real winners are the patients because they get to see the provider faster and our staff because they have better tools to do their jobs, and that gets them excited. And we're going to continue, as Sri said, continue the prior auth journey because we want that one-to-many solution as well.
Thank you, Sri and Karen. What is it that you wish you knew now that you didn't know when you got started, perhaps?
That's I know a lot of things, right, Michael? So every time you are in the journey, you always realize, oh, I wish I knew those things, right? So one of the key what we realized is, Michael, in this journey when we're in the part of these pilots, so we didn't realize we didn't anticipate how critical is our partnerships are. So anytime in the clinical data exchange or a prior auth or any of these things we have a lot of partners. Everybody on the call, I'm pretty sure, we don't solve every problem in-house. We depend on our vendors, we depend on our partnerships, right? So in this context, when we set a timeline for our pilots, we actually did not took that as a consideration. So after working with them, because every vendor, every partner is in a different stage in their maturity, right? When it comes to the FHIR, when it comes to APIs, when it comes to the IT implementations. So you need to think about those things when you are setting a timeline and the pilots. So once you identify the right partners, the right vendor, oh, this project is going to be like really going to go smooth instead of like setting a goal for yourself and then you realizing all those things. That's the one thing, Michael, which comes top of my mind when I think about think about everybody in your workflow for sure when you're actually participating in this pilots.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, time and resources, I mean, that never changes, especially on the provider side. You know, our role is healthcare, and the IT side, sometimes we have to, as my leader would say, do it off the side of our desk. And but we, you know, built out our own FHIR infrastructure and API management and products so that we could scale to support our ACO. And while we had a partner that helped us build that infrastructure, you know, we wanted our internal resources to learn it, and it was new. So it really expanded that timeline that we took to build the infrastructure that we wanted. And at the same time, we're learning. And so we're not really considered a development shop. We have some great resources. And the nice part that the benefits that come out of this is that it's real good. It's job satisfaction for the folks that are working on this because they see the benefits there. You know, there's other things like technical challenges with endpoints and security and all those other things that happen. So if anybody ever wants to talk about those, we're happy to share it. But, you know, I think it's just really understanding that it takes some time and you need to bring that whole group of folks together. But from there, you get many benefits too.
Thank you, Sri and Karen. I'd like to remind our audience that if you have questions that you've put into the Q&A, or if you have any more as we're going along here, we'll certainly get to them after we get through a few more questions with our panelists. What I'd like to do now is turn toward, you know, how you get this started at your organization, how you gain executive support and have resources allocated for that. And, you know, for this, I'd like to ask Michael Westover and Chris Jaffe, you know, how you did that at your organizations.
Sure. So I work for Providence, and the compliance angle has not gotten it done for us. It's not highly, it doesn't motivate people. Like you will comply with this thing, especially when there are deadlines that are 2027. It feels far away. Where we've had success in, we're going through this right now, is to look at where is there a meaningful financial opportunity for Providence, and there absolutely is with interoperability. So we look at things like clinical quality measures. Can we get clinical quality data to and from payers? Can we get the risk profile information to payers? It's very important. There's supplemental clinical information to be used for other purposes where there's a meaningful business opportunity for Providence that matters today. And then on the cost side, if we're talking about ROI, if you think about the hundreds and thousands of people, because I work in a large organization, that their job is to manually look in our EMR and then copy the information into a payer's web portal, or the hundreds of people that are writing the same query that someone else is writing to provide the same information to a payer. There are huge opportunities for us to become more efficient. And frankly, we don't have the luxury of having tens of thousands of people working in IS and not doing patient care. So we need to become efficient. And the only way to do that, from my perspective, is to do that based on standards and ways that scale, like modern APIs, the things we're talking about at Trebuchet. So that's how we've had some success getting resources to do this.
And for us, it's here at Elevance, it is a lot the same. We might have some different challenges than Providence does. And one thing that we've done is we've had to find executive champions who are really excited by the possibilities of improving patient care, streamlining patient care, and ultimately, saving both money and time in all of those processes. It can be, especially a big organization where things are very variable. A lot of systems involved, a lot of different leadership involved, a lot of different lines of business involved. It can be really challenging to get to the right people or get to someone who can make an overall decision. And so we've had to kind of focus down on finding just a few key leaders who can kind of be standard bearers to help us work through that. And finding those standard bearers who are excited about the possibilities, and then working with them very closely to move things forward.
Thank you, Michael and Chris. I'd like to ask the panel, what's the benefit of participating in a pilot? What's the ROI for you? What metrics do you consider, and the role of patient matching and metrics around that as well? Quality metrics, as Michael mentioned as well, and how it's not just about implementing, it's about scaling.
I'll take a first swing at that. We don't have any firm metrics today, but it's really about, again, having those champions in the organization who want to start seeing some successes, even a small success that shows, hey, we can get clinical measures in a computable way using CDEX or, and some of that sort of thing. Getting that early experience. A lot of folks know that the future seems to be going in a very fire-like direction. And so that's kind of made some of those conversations a little easier. The promise of getting more discrete data, more actionable data quicker, and very importantly, not getting as much data in some ways. We don't need, just because you just saw the doctor, we don't need to see your entire medical record, the entire CCDA again, with only one encounter being added, and FHIR's offering us the possibility, when we're doing that kind of quality measure, getting more discrete data that we can incrementally get, and that's a real win. And then specifically, some of the benefits of piloting and the Trebuchet project in particular is we're all going through these same challenges at the same time. We're all in maybe a little bit different places, and we can start seeing, hey, Cambia or Providence, they're having a real heartburn on this particular thing that we haven't even looked at yet. And so it kind of prepares us for those conversations and plans internally so that we can kind of see where the dragons lie. And so particularly with Trebuchet, it's a really valuable thing to be able to see where all the troubles are in the road.
Michael, I can add a little bit. I mean, like Chris covered on the clinical data perspective, but I will add that is a very critical for us also for measuring, because the data which we need, we couldn't able to get for all our members all the information so far. I mean, it's with the chart chasing, with the different data and all those things. We are at a stage where we need to scale. So that's the one aspect. But the other one, which I'm going to say measuring, we got the taste of the value through our Smart Auth app, because if you see our metrics, you guys might have seen a lot of times we shared across multiple. We would like to happy to share again, but we got the taste of that, like how quickly authorizations happens and how it is actually benefiting like intake teams within our own organizations, how it is saving the time, how the patient is getting to the care much faster, right? When we got that one, how can we scale that now? Like 100 times for different, I mean, like all the health plans, we want to see that scale. So what we saw, like the Trebuchet project is the one which is going to help us to get there. So that is one of the key aspect what we are looking, Michael, when it comes here.
And I know Sheree mentioned, we have metrics, time studies, and different things of how we improve productivity for the prior authorization, the 3-step process of prior authorization. I do want to also just highlight, I think Chris said it, is that it really comes down to, I think, the collaboration and networking, because it's that qualitative side of participating in a pilot that, we have direct line to our partners. I call you up, I'm having a problem, let's talk about it. And the other thing is it's collaboration within our internal groups too. I already mentioned that, our operations folks, when we started it, they thought it was a magic button when they used prior auth. And just last week, because it's fun to tell stories, we had a collaboration with Regents and Cambia on how our auth teams were using the app, coming together for enhancements and trying to push adoption even across our organization. and there was excitement. You know, we added on some imaging prior auths, and our group was just so excited and saying, you got to use this. This is the best, fastest, quickest tool I have in my repertoire. So that part to me is also the advantages when you get to participate in this.
And just quickly, I want to point out that it is very helpful to choose metrics where the payer and the provider are aligned. And we have a large number of value-based care contracts where clinical quality matters. It is so easy for us to get in a room and say, we need to knock it out of the park on clinical quality. Our patients need it, provider needs it, payer needs it, and we can do this via FHIR and Trebuchet in a way that can, we've seen a 40% increase in the amount of clinical quality data that we're sending to our payers that can be used for measures. I mean, that makes everyone happy down the line.
Thank you very much. My colleagues here appreciate your views and your experience, sharing some of the wisdom from your experience with us. What I'd like to do now is hand it to Alex and the rest of our team for any questions that we haven't answered or other questions that may come up.
We have some great questions that came in, so I'm going to go ahead and run through some of these, even though I think you've answered some of them, but not necessarily all of them. So hopefully everybody can stay on screen with us, and as I walk through these, and then you can decide who best wants to tackle some of the questions that are coming in, because you may not all feel they're in your realm. So the first one, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that you do not need to be a member of an accelerator to participate. Part of the value of the accelerated, funded, and community environment is that we're very opening, and we welcome others to come into the fold from the industry, use the implementation guides, they're freely available, and to participate in use case calls, as well as the project calls. Specifically, Trebuchet is open to everyone, as well as you can upload I shouldn't say upload, you can share your progress with any of the DaVinci IGs on our DaVinci in Action Interactive. That is a community resource, an industry-facing resource for anyone to share the great work that they're doing with the DaVinci implementation guides. We're here about transforming the care delivery, like Michael Westover was talking about, that proof point that benefits the patient, the providers, the payers. And so it's a community effort. So we encourage you to participate in any way you can. So we have a couple different questions from the audience. I'm going to just start at the top and run down. So the first one is really related to sort of syncing up mindful perspectives related to TEFCA. And Janice asks us if, according to Sequoia, if you use TEFCA at all, you are required to support the traditional IHE, CCDA exchanges for treatment and individual access services. You can't just do FHIR. So do you have a special dispensation around that, or are folks participating in Trebuchet also standing up non-FHIR exchange?
I can answer that one.
Thanks, Chris. Scott.
So that is correct. TEFCA does have certain IHE requirements embedded. That is why we are not actually piloting TEFCA. We are piloting TEFCA Lite in the sense that it is a networked communication without the stringent requirements that the SOPs bring. There's great reason for those SOPs. I'm not speaking against them in any way, but our goal is to get live with certain functions and data flows that are not necessarily aligned with those SOPs today. And so what we're trying to do is borrow the things in TEFCA that will enable our data exchange and show that that's possible, and then help inform the TEFCA SOPs as they move forward.
Thanks. I think it really underscores the reality that interoperability is a team sport, and there are many playing fields out there in the industry. I think it's really a valuable proposition to participate in the Trebuchet efforts because you're so close to the implementation guide authors and the experts that are building out these resources, and really charging the way for the rest of us. We have another question related to thinking that Trebuchet was using TEFCA for the shared beyond point-to-point for specific use cases. And they're asking, is this not the case? I'm not sure I understand the question. So maybe, Janice, you can elaborate on that question and we can circle back on that one.
No, that is, I think I understand the question. Just basically, yeah, we're looking to use networked approaches to connectivity for the networked use cases, then beyond the point-to-point use cases. That is correct.
Okay, if that doesn't answer the question, please add another one so we can further address that. There's a question about elaborating on the benefits, and this came about 35 minutes ago, so I think there's been some subsequent discussion really highlighting the benefits of joining in a pilot, but I'm not sure if anybody would like to further summarize their passion and reason for why there are so many benefits.
I could take a stab at this one. This is a good question. It reminds me of there was a time when we participated in Da Vinci and we started asking the question, like, working on individual use cases, or let's say ATR for attribution, you tend to get into the technical details, but there was a question of where do we get in the room with the folks that are actually getting this done? A bunch of like-minded individuals who know more about this than anyone in the world, where we can work together to jump through hoops and solve problems. And someone whispered in our ear, that's Trebuchet you should be going out. If you want to be experimenting with this and practicing and then moving from pilots to production, you need to be in the Trebuchet room. And so when we joined Trebuchet, it was an excellent opportunity for us to get exposure to folks like Scott and Mike Gould and other folks on the line right now who know a lot about these topics and can give us answers to questions, can talk about areas where they have failed so that we don't have to recreate their failures. So it's been a great way to build things as a community, as opposed to going off secretly, with the pair and doing something that no one else knows about.
Thank you for that, Michael. All right, so let's now go to talk about what does share authentication information mean? So who would like to talk about sharing authentication information?
This was my comment here. What we're seeking to do is help onboard connectivity faster. So one thing that Cambia did is they created a Confluence document on the Da Vinci Confluence that gives all of the instructions that you need to set up and run CRD, DTR, and PAS with them. That's amazing. That allows anybody out there to get started immediately, and to do it on their own without having to wait for an email or approval. Not every organization is going to be able to do that. You're going to have certain concerns or policy restrictions. That's fine. Doing what you can to enable that is really the goal, to help organizations onboard faster, more easily, to be able to test your software against theirs, and to really allow your software to be used as a testing platform, which benefits the tester, the other party, but also benefits you by getting additional experience and additional code runs.
Thank you, Scott. All right, so the next question is for Mike Gould, asking you to elaborate on the Z Omega tool and involvement in their role in Trebuchet.
So Scott mentioned in his slides where he's talking about the Z Omega tool in the context also with the PayX tool from another vendor. So as a vendor, we're trying to facilitate the work that providers and payers are doing with the various use cases. We have a focus on burden reduction with our tool. And our tool that we make available is actually the Smart on Fire app for the burden reduction stack. It allows a provider to embed the Smart on Fire app into their EMR and to make the CDS hooks calls, for instance, in CRD to a payer API endpoint. And from that point on, also to continue through the steps in DTR and PAS to submit a prior authorization request. So we provide a tool that's essentially for the provider side, because many EMRs today, even in their development stack, their pre-production instances don't provide the CDS hooks capability, and even up until about a year ago didn't. So we stepped forward to bring a Smart on Fire app to the provider side of the equation, so that there was a way to test the burden reduction implementation guides with a payer API endpoint.
Thank you. All right, we have another question that dives into how long do we think Trebuchet will live before mission accomplished and it disbands? Is it 2 years, 15 years, and what milestones on the roadmap look like? And I think it's really an interesting question, because the Da Vinci project, when it was formed in 2018, was brought together by industry leaders who chose to drive interoperable data exchange specifications for value-based care, recognizing there were gaps in our data exchange ecosystems and standards. And with the expectation that we would come, do our work, we would identify the master pain points, we would mature the use cases that reflected those pain points and through the shape of implementation guides, which can then be transformed into software stacks. And then we would mature those specifications over time, and then we would turn the body of work back into the HL7 work group that's sponsored technically through the HL7 process, because Da Vinci as the funding mechanism by industry to really produce that body of work on a predictable cadence had completed its mission. So as we look towards the Trebuchet project, this is really an effort that has really taken life to scale and create a system-wide usage of the implementation guides. And so I think it's important to understand the context of how Da Vinci looks at the body of work and why industry is here driving, solving our own interoperable data exchange specifications and needs. And so Trebuchet, I think Scott and Mike and the rest of the team have done a great job in setting a focus for the cohorts, which has had support from our membership and our steering committee. But I'm not sure that they've got a particular roadmap beyond the 2 years. So I want to turn it over to the panelists to talk about the milestones and when you think that this mission will be accomplished, whether it's tied to 0057 timelines or some other benchmarks.
I think I'd chime in to say that, we want to support pilot work as long as pilot work's happening.
Yeah.
I would add to it that, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, thanks. There's so much that needs to be done. I mean, even if we took all the IGs that exist now and the data was flowing perfectly, I would have questions about, okay, now let's work on benefits and the division of financial responsibility. And then let's talk about moving away from X12 to FHIR. I mean, there's so many ways that we need to exchange data, and ways to exchange data we haven't thought about yet. So I feel like we're not close to being done with standards and data exchange.
I think you bring up a good point in that the implementation guides, the work we're initially focused on is around the burden reduction and clinical data exchange and attribution. But there are other pilots that we're planning within Da Vinci, like patient cost transparency for the full good faith estimate through advanced explanation of benefits, which we have a full FHIR end-to-end solution. But we really need to continue to test and pilot to mature those so that they're really meeting all of the industry needs. Does anyone else want to chime in on the mission accomplished?
Yeah. I'm going to say, I agree with what everyone is saying, that this is not specifically a use case focused. While we're starting with burden reduction, I really see it more of a, this is getting FHIR implemented at scale, first and foremost. And so when we're at a position in the industry where whatever mechanism that we have, everyone is already largely connected with everyone, and there's nothing that's special that's going to need to be set up for a new use case other than, hey, partner so-and-so, we want to test, whatever the new IG of the month is with you. Let's use our existing connectivity channels to do that. Once we're at that point, I don't see much of a need for Trebuchet anymore. I think we're very, very, very far away from that. I'll say at least 10 years. So while we're still experimenting and figuring out how to make this work, I think that's going to be the real value of Trebuchet and why it needs to be around.
And I'll add that Trebuchet in some regards drew out of our Connectathon experience also. And Connectathons are focused on specific aspects of implementation guides that change as those implementation guides are balloted. But what we bring forward in Trebuchet is both the implementation guide issues, but how they impact real life implementations. So as Scott mentioned earlier, as you go through a cohort, you'll do the pre-production, pre-pilot testing pieces. You'll do the pilot testing, and then there's an opportunity to even go on into production piloting. And then there's opportunities to do it with additional trading partners. And we do want to encourage folks to leave the endpoints and other artifacts that they bring to the table available for cohorts that follow them to utilize. And that will give you a broader base of interoperability experience, where the things you learn by going through the pilot and the cohort that you're in are acquired by you and those in that cohort, and those that follow you. But those that follow you by using your endpoints will supply to you things that you may not have thought of, that may be improvements and new opportunities for how you implement these guides, whether it's a quality use case, whether it's burden reduction, or other PHI exchange. So we foresee that this could go on for some number of years from now, because in 2 years' time, when many more organizations have implemented some of the burden reduction or payer data exchange or provider data exchange use cases, there'll be new things that we learn just by virtue of many more organizations doing this. And we'll find ways that we may not have even imagined today. So there's great opportunity for having a test bed and a production pilot experience bed for us to make improvements in the processes where these data exchange flows are supporting, so that we can really make a difference in how we serve patients and how we serve each other as payers and providers.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think that really helps show also the continuum we
Yeah,
have.
sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Sri.
No, go ahead. I think I was just, I think, Michael, you just summarized it. Awesome. I was just thinking, in this journey of scaling all these use cases, imagine the knowledge base and the experience what we can create it next 5 years. Just take 5 years, because we never had this platform to experiment so many things. So if every one of us coming in on this and then creating this knowledge base, creating this experience, tomorrow somebody coming in the first time, it will be much more smooth experience. And that's exactly what we want to create for the future. So that's just, I think, I like the way you explained, Michael. Alex,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. I think
Oh,
And,
no,
and oftentimes, early adopters make an investment that others may not be able to make, but others that follow will certainly make contributions that those early adopters will benefit from.
Yeah, and I think that this is, I love both of your comments, Michael and Sri, because part of what I love about the HL7 and the Da Vinci communities is that we have a repeatable process that we're advancing and we're testing along the way. And as we're maturing, we're passing more advanced gating mechanisms to ensure that we're really getting to a normative or a fully baked, needs very little maintenance anticipated moving forward kind of a status. And so, you know, HL7 has this connectathon methodology that we use for the early kind of testing. And I think Trebuchet has really leaned into the next generation of the testing that we need to be doing, which is this safe piloting, proof of concept, really among trading partners work. And so one of the questions that we also got was, after a successful pilot, well, what happens next? And I think the goal is, you know, and as a part of the Da Vinci project objectives is we want to build standards that we can all use, but we also want to implement those. And so I think the goal here is that after a successful pilot, I would think what happens next is production. But what do you all think?
I agree. And we're doing that. I mean, we had an opportunity at Multicare to, through Trebuchet, test out our CDEX and our bulk, and we are using both of those products now to support our quality measure reporting. And so, you know, you always have that big picture use case in mind, but now it's, you know, it's a real world use case that we need to report on, and we're working on it. And, you know, for others that you need to, at a more detailed level, refine the use cases, then that's where you bring in all of the stakeholders and you talk again, how are we going to do this? I would sure love to get rid of flat files in our organization and share data, you know, through interoperable methods. And so what we're continuing to look at, how can we improve workflows too?
We
Just
don't
add
have
on to that, that is, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, thanks. We honestly don't have the luxury of just doing pilots, right?
Yeah.
Like, we need to do pilots that are successful that lead to production. So, like, we're in production with ATR and CDEX, and you know, we're expanding the, you know, the quiver of, you know, data that we're able to exchange at scale. And then even for folks that cannot accept our FHIR data, we'll take our FHIR and we'll flatten it, and we'll share the flattened FHIR in the flat file format, so that they can get the benefits of the improved data quality that comes from, you know, the FHIR and the data standards coming out of our EHR. So I think absolutely, after a successful pilot, immediately to production, and then scaling to as many payer partners as possible.
Chris?
I'm going to, it's going to depend a little bit on what the goal of the pilot was. Sometimes the pilot's simply a technology test. And so sometimes you take what you learn from that pilot and you go on to develop your production product and, you know, get ready for the next pilot. If you can go into production though, in general, you're going to be planning your next pilot with the next use case, because we just have so many use cases out there right now. I think, you know, at some level, we're going to be in a situation of perpetual piloting for at least a few more years to get through a lot of these different use cases. And hopefully future use cases will have shorter and shorter pilot phases as we get experience with the underlying technology and can move forward faster.
Yeah, and I think it also kind of flows back to some of the things that Karen said a while ago about getting with like your auth team and figuring out your workflow analysis and understanding where the value proposition is. And so it's about the technology meeting operational workflows that also then has an implication to your collateral and your communications, your provider and payer networking aspects. So there's a lot to be woven together to really garner the value. So I don't know if anybody has any further comments on that before I ask the next question.
I will say that for some organizations, the difference between pilot and production, getting that last 10% to actually productionize something is a really huge lift. And it's actually not, you know, it looks like 10% from the outside, but it's actually about 50% of the work. And so don't let that discourage you from trying to do the pilot. Still, you know, there's lessons to be learned there that'll still help you going forward with that, even if you can't seamlessly migrate directly into a production situation.
Yes, I agree. So there was a question about whether an IG, can any IG be tested if a pair of partners wish to do so, or are you limited to preset use cases in Trebuchet?
Yep. Any implementation guide can be tested. Especially if you're bringing a partner to the table for that testing and just looking for Trebuchet to kind of wrap around it and help you. There's certain aspects. We do not want to stand in the way of pilot work. We want to be informed of that pilot work. We want to build momentum with you as you're piloting. Like, we just want to build this community, so we don't want to get in the way of anything there.
And we have one more question. What are some recommended tips for planting the seeds of TEFCA and QHINs with a regional HIE? Scott, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah. So eHealth Exchange, we've been talking with a lot of different HIEs about what it means to kind of build upon this networked environment and create national connectivity. So there are use cases out there that HIEs are actively exploring and piloting to enable things like payer ADT communication across the nation. You know, the ability to help a payer organization understand when their member is receiving care somewhere else is one key aspect that HIEs can actually like really own and do a great job of, given their technical mix today. There are a huge number of opportunities out there for HIEs to expand into this space and provide value. If you think about it, we're at the new frontier of integration where all these payers are joining a national network and integrating in ways that they haven't before. And there's going to be a need for technology to enable processes. HIEs should look at that and understand how they can assist. And eHealth Exchanges working with HIEs to enable them and to bring those use cases live. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think the seed is planted, you know, with HIEs. I mean, you know, for various use cases in Washington State, we were part of a health information exchange to be able to provide data. So looking at some of the electronic case reporting or that type of public health reporting and how can we leverage that. So I think there's other use cases happening out there in pilots in that area already.
That's a really great point, especially when you look at the work of the Helios Accelerator. They've really advanced a number of the electronic case reporting objectives as public health is a part of the TEFCA sphere. So that's it's important to also understand that FHIR is a standard that we can use, and that there are different accelerators tackling different portions of what needs. Like, for instance, the FHIR at Scale Task Force, or FAST, is really helping us to lean into the security or the consent or directory aspects that are more infrastructure related, whereas Helios is public health, Gravity is social determinants of health, and of course, Accelerator of Da Vinci is all about value-based care. And I've just touched upon a couple of them, but we actually have the capacity to mix and match the use cases, specifications to help us then build that software stack that we need to really transform and automate workflows. Oh, we just had another question come in. What elements of FAST are relevant for Trebuchet? And that's a really great setup for not only, for also reminding folks about tomorrow's call. Scott?
Yeah. Oh, I see Janice. I wonder who this anonymous person was.
We have a couple Janices on the call.
So Trebuchet doesn't necessarily incorporate the FAST IGs into any of our use cases, but we are incorporating some elements of dynamic client registration into the the TEFCA Lite concept, as well as some of the other security elements, really seeking to standardize how organizations secure their endpoints to enable faster onboarding and connectivity is one way that we're incorporating some of FAST into Trebuchet. But we are looking at expanding and really using more of the dynamic client registration flows and enabling more pilot work with those concepts. We're kind of still nascent in that area though, and looking for organizations who are really ready to test.
Thank you. This has been a very informative session. I really want to thank all of you for coming and presenting today. And I hope that everyone understands what you've seen is the tip of the iceberg of the contributions that these esteemed panelists have made to advancing interoperable data exchange to benefit patient care. They're not only passionate and doing it off the side of their desk, as Karen noted, but they're spending their personal time and bringing their A game to really help others learn how to advance their FHIR ecosystem adoption. Not only because we may have some compliance objectives, but because there's a strategic value and a benefit to your business model and bottom line in patient care delivery and related functionality. So we hope that you will join us again at our next Community Roundtable on March 26, 2025 at 4 p.m. And if you can spare a few moments, we've got just a short few questions of a survey at the end of the webinar that'll help us understand what topics you'd like to see in the future and to give us feedback on how we did today. With that, I hope you all have a great balance of your day, and we look forward to seeing you at HIMSS or at a future webinar. Take care.